Hello, Patriots, freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. So, tonight we're coming to you across four Facebook platforms: my regular Mark Friesen, Canada First, Mark Friesen Saskatoon Grasswood, the PPC platform, and Forum for Canadian Sovereignty. Also to YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and DLive. And also to a number of different podcast platforms. So, to all those that are listening to this on your podcast, welcome to the show. Um, Hello, Joni. Joni from Lethbridge. Good evening, Sharon. When was this? This is now. This is happening right now, Laurie. uh, can barely hear you. Oh, how's everybody else's sound? Can you hear me? Are we good? Just let me know there if you can hear me good enough. Hello, Daphne from Tabor, Kathleen, Irma, Molly from Toronto. Looks like everybody can hear me. Morgana's from Kootenay Bay, loud and clear. Everyone else's sound says is good, so we must be good. Murray Henderson from the Philippines. What? That must be nice. Enjoy yourself, Murray. Sound is good. Good evening, Crystal. Hi from Terrace. Better now. Okay, I can hear you. You can hear everybody's hearing me. All right. Lori's from Saskatoon. Yes, Michelle. That's good. There must be quite a drastic time difference between Saskatoon and the Philippines. Maybe it's morning there, I guess. I assume that's probably morning there. I'm good, Guitar Flame. Evening, Catherine. Hello, Bogna from Surrey. Evening, Mark. Danielle. Good to see you. 14 hours ahead. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. So you're in your morning. Good evening from Change Room Central. All right, Chuck. Hello, Carol. Um, Sorry to hear that, Danielle. Danielle's sick, I guess. No good. Good evening, Cheryl from Saskatoon. So we got some things we got to talk about. I had a good day today. I went and met with some people from the provincial riding that I'll probably be running in next election, most likely. Shouldn't say probably, most likely. Arm River, which is the riding directly south of here. A rural riding, which I'm going to feel much more comfortable in. Had a really good meeting. I think there were somewhere in the ballpark of 12 people there today. We talked a lot of things about provincial politics and how Saskatchewan has this really cool opportunity to lead the country out of the mess we're in. And a lot of the reason why is because, and I've talked about this before, is because of our rural to urban split is heavily favored towards rural. Um, and rural folks seem to be more easily activated into action. And in all of this, the answer to all of this insanity from Agenda 2030, the SDGs, is the people. The people have to activate. we have to get control of our rural municipalities, our RMs, and we have to get control of our towns and our cities with good people that understand the much bigger picture. We've abdicated, and we talked about this too, we've abdicated a lot of our responsibilities for decades, and we have to reignite, we have to re-inspire and motivate people to get active again in their communities. And it seems, I think, rural Saskatchewan is the place that's going to do it. We have an opportunity to lead this country out of the mess we're in. And so that's, the big focus of even the Buffalo Party that I belong to. Our focus is going to be inspiring and activating people in rural Saskatchewan. And when I refer to rural Saskatchewan, I mean everything outside of Saskatoon and Regina within this province. Because that's really, from what I can tell, that's the lion's share of rural folks, whether it's Swift Current, Weyburn, Prince Albert, Yorkton, Kindersley, wherever it is. So we have this opportunity to really do that, even more so than Alberta. Part of the discussion this morning we did talk about was how it seems rural Alberta might be a little bit more activated than maybe rural Saskatchewan is, but that's the job of people like me and the leader of the Buffalo Party, Phil Zajac, and others, to go around and inform and educate and inspire and motivate people to get involved. And so I'm happy to do that. That's my mission in life. That's what I'm going to be doing. So that's going to be the focus. Also, one other announcement: the AGM, the annual general meeting for the Buffalo Party, is coming up in March in Humboldt. It was announced today that it'll be in Humboldt. We were sort of talking about maybe Davidson, but unfortunately Davidson doesn't have a lot of hotel space. And for people that are going to be joining the general meeting over a 2-day period, we're going to need some hotel space. So Davidson wasn't really the best option, unfortunately. So they moved it to Humboldt, which is cool as well. So that'll be coming up. Check the website, Buffalo Party of Saskatchewan website, and they'll have all the details posted there. No, Lois Todd. Who really does at this point? It's pretty hard to trust Scott Moe and the Sask Party based on what they've been doing. And yes, that is good news. RCMP Brenda Lucki is resigning. It's interesting how these people start to feel a little bit of pressure and then decide they have to resign and get out of Dodge before it gets too hot. So that was good news. That's good news. But anyways, today I want to talk about digital ID, digital currency, and 15-minute cities, because that seems to be on the lips of a lot of people, not only in Saskatchewan but across the country. And digital ID has reared its ugly head because they just had a premier's meeting, and Scott Moe and Danielle Smith both said to their respective provinces that they wouldn't be caving to Justin Trudeau's demand by, accepting money in turn for accepting digital ID and going against the people of Saskatchewan and their privacy rights. So it's interesting. Here's some of the language in the on the Canada website. To access their share of the federal funding, including the guaranteed 5% growth top-up payments to the CHT for the next 5 years, Canada Health Transfer is CHT, provincial and territorial governments are asked to commit to improve how health information is collected, shared, used, and reported to Canadians, to promote greater transparency on results and to help manage public health emergencies. This will include an agreement to develop and use comparable indicators through the Canadian Institute for Health Information, CIHI, and its data partners, starting with the indicators outlined below, a broader suite of indicators, including for Indigenous. So it seems to me, and I sure hope Scott Moe and Danielle Smith are prepared to clarify their position, because they went into this whole thing. If you remember, I posted a memo that Scott Moe was attaching to emails in response to people writing and airing their concerns about their private medical information being shared with the federal government, which is none of their business. And how Scott Moe's position was that under Pegida, is it Pepita? I don't know. I can't remember the acronym. Under a Privacy Act, that information should not and will not be shared to the broader Canadian government. It's none of their business. And that was his position. But it seems to me, based on the language that I just read, that they may have caved. So I'm hoping that Scott Moe and Danielle Smith both clarify their positions and prove to us that they stuck to their original position. That's the hope. I don't know. I'm not terribly confident. Scott Moe has flip-flopped on so many issues in the past. His record isn't outstanding. So we'll see. Hopefully they come out and they clarify their position. But when we talk about digital ID, it's extremely important that people understand that digital ID is 100% related to you know what? The Sustainable Development Goals. I can't stress this enough. People truly need to have context and understand where all of this comes from. And this is why I say it's extremely important for even provincial premiers who are put in this position of coercion and extortion and bribery from the federal government, a federal government who is hard pressed to achieve the goals of sustainable development, to fulfill their commitment to an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. It's important that our premiers understand where all of this is coming from. Now, Scott Moe has said numerous times that he has no idea what the sustainable development is, which only means he's carrying water for the federal Conservatives. Because if Scott Moe actually said no to sustainable development goals, no to ceding our sovereignty as a province, no to ceding our autonomy as a province, like he said he was going to, then he would absolutely have to acknowledge and recognize the Sustainable Development Goals. So I just want to go through this a little bit. In order to measure progress toward the achievement of SDGs, comprehensive and accurate monitoring of how citizens are being accounted for across the 17 targets is critical. The challenge is that an estimated 1.5 billion people lack proof of identification and are missing from government registries. A number of leading global institutions have highlighted that identification underpins many of the SDGs and is a prerequisite for success. So in other words, digital ID is an enormous part of achieving the goals of sustainable development. And remember what the goals of sustainable development are. It's the Communist Manifesto on steroids. The hyper-centralization of governance, the hyper-centralization of resources, and the hyper-centralization of control of all the people on the planet and everything they do. Without proof of identification, a citizen's right to vote, open a bank account, go to school, or access essential health services such as vaccinations can be prohibitively difficult. Achieving gender equality, good governance, social participation, and the protection of rights is equally challenging. Additionally, there is a risk that what is not counted doesn't count, and the ability to measure the impact and outcomes of the SDGs overall could be compromised. So you see, coming from this unelected, unaccountable foreign entity, how important it is to them that nation states implement a digital ID, a track and trace system, a system of surveillance, a social credit system based on the Chinese model. That's what this all leads to. SDG Target 16.9 seeks to address this by setting a target by 2030, provide legal identity for all, including birth, registration, and sets a high bar for the international community to strive for. Achieving this, however, will require new approaches, partnerships, and technologies. Digital identity offers the potential to leapfrog from analog ID infrastructures and scale access to and participation in the digital economy. Policymakers, private and public sector actors will need innovative strategies to overcome barriers and deliver on this opportunity and address issues of trust, privacy, and data management, for example. So there you go. So they're tying this into digital currency, to the digital dollar. This is what it's all tied in, so they can control all aspects of your life, where and how you spend your money, when they can shut your bank account, when they just close things on you, because you're not meeting, as an individual, you're not meeting the targets set out for you by our national government or maybe even provincial government. And you're not playing nice. You're probably labeled or framed as an extremist because you want freedom, you want liberty, you want justice, you want equality under the law, you want sovereignty, you want prosperity, and you want the truth. Those things don't work in this new paradigm that they're creating, this new digital house, this social credit system. Everything you do will be known by the government, will be tracked and traced by the government, including where you spend your money and how you spend your money. If you're buying too much fuel, for example, you're going to pay a fine, most likely in some regard, or they'll just withdraw it from your account. It'll be automatic. MasterCard's getting into this game. If you have a MasterCard, then they're going to automatically penalize you for using too much carbon, filling up with too much fuel in a week or 2 weeks or a month, whatever the case may be. So this is all part of it. This is all part of achieving the goals of sustainable development. And we just read how important this is to their overall agenda. So my question then is to Scott Moe, the premier of this province. When you answer people that ask you the question, what's your position on the sustainable development agenda, and you say you don't know, you've never read it, or if you're Pierre Poilievre and you don't know and you say you've never read it, what are you, both of you individuals, Scott Moe and Pierre Poilievre, what are you doing in a leadership position? What are you doing representing the people of Saskatchewan? What are you doing wanting to represent the people of this country? If you claim you don't know anything about it, which of course we all know is a bald-faced lie. Of course you know what it's about. Pierre Poilievre has voted on it no less than 6 times. He sat on SDG's committees. He's approved as a critic, finance critic. He's never opposed budgets created to fund SDG achievement here in this country. He's part of a party that made it law in this country. He's part of the party, he leads the party that's responsible for committing us to this agenda. And yet he knows nothing about it. Well, my only answer is you're a lying fool. But if you don't know you have no business leading anything in terms of politics. You should probably resign as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. You're in no position to lead anything. Scott Moe, exactly the same. You're in no position to lead anything if you don't acknowledge and recognize and denounce this agenda for exactly what it is. That's just the way it is. That's just the facts. Anyways, carrying on to 4.2, the identification gap in the SDGs. Many of us rely on some form of official identification in order to navigate through daily life. From opening a bank account, accessing services from the government, making online payments, or boarding a plane, the ability to prove who we are can often be taken for granted. However, for nearly 1.5 billion people globally, whom the World Bank estimates do not have proof of official identity, the risk is not being accounted for as heightened. Proof of identity has long been a problem for the poor, with low-level birth registration, particularly in Africa and Asia, hindering access to fundamental services such as education and healthcare. The ID gap also disproportionately impacts women, compounding the challenge as asserting property rights and gaining access to financial services or subsidies, for example. The geopolitical concentration of this issue in low and middle income countries underlines the importance of developing new means of enabling access to official identification for those who do not currently have it. So here you go. So here is their solution is cookie cutter policy for everybody on the planet. And we're doing it because 1.5 billion people have trouble getting ID cards. They have trouble identifying themselves. So, to help them, we're going to go digital across the board. It has nothing to do with helping them. This has everything to do with gaining access and control to your lives, tracking and tracing your lives, and putting us all into a social credit system. This is what they're doing. And they use the excuse that 1.5 billion people don't have proper identification. And this will fix that. So that's the excuse they're using. That's the cover that they use for implementing digital ID across the board. And of course, digital ID runs into digital currency. So, with all of this talk about digital ID coming up, it's important that people understand how it's related to the greater Agenda 2030 and how it's part of this overall agenda. I'm not making any of this up. Digital identity and the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, it's not any more clear than that. This is where it comes from. This is why it's happening. And again, it's about control. It's about being able to track and trace everybody digitally. And it'll be connected to your financial services, to your banking. Your banking is going to be going digital, and all of this will be connected and collected. And there goes your privacy. And couple that with surveillance and 5G, 6G, 7G, whatever the case may be, this data harvesting on you, the individual. They want to know everything that you're doing, where you go, which leads into, obviously, 15-minute cities. So let's pull up this one. In terms of digital currency. So this is the impetus for digital currency. People's money, harnessing digitalization to finance a sustainable future. Yes, the UN Secretary General establishes the Task Force on Digital Financing of the Sustainable Development Goals as part of his broader roadmap for financing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The task force's mandate is to recommend and catalyze ways to harness digitalization in accelerating financing of the SDGs. People's money, harnessing digitalization to finance a sustainable future. In the task force final report, it summarizes the findings and recommendations developed and agreed by the task force. Since its inception in November 2018, it's based on extensive engagement with stakeholders and research. It builds on the task force's progress report, Harnessing Digitalization and Financing Sustainable Development Goals, released on the occasion of the UN Assembly in September 2019. For further resources, including executive summary report, go here, blah, blah, blah. And then you get here, and the UN SDG Guide supports, tracks, and oversees a coordination of development operations in 162 countries and territories. The UN SDG has strengthened coordination system that works at a country, regional, and global level. UN teams are now better enabled to support countries to achieve 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It's interesting how all of this stuff used to be referred to as conspiracy theory. Remember? Since 1992, when guys like myself and others were talking about Agenda 21 and Agenda for the 21st Century, that all these countries committed to, was just a conspiracy theory. Agenda 2030 is just a conspiracy theory. It's as real as rain. And everything we're going through, everything that's happening, including digital currency, is related to the Agenda 2030. All of it. Up to and including 15-minute cities. So 15-minute cities, is that related to the Agenda 2030? Of course it is. So I just saw Chris Sky do an interview with a couple of counselors that didn't know their ear from their elbow. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. I saw it yesterday. And kudos to Chris Sky for creating awareness. But again, we have to understand where this comes from. It's not, just some counselor out of Edmonton that dreamt this up and decided, hey, as a city council, let's do this together. It has nothing to do with city councils developing this agenda on their own. This is, again, cookie cutter policies being created by an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. That's what this is. And this is all this 15-minute cities, 15-minute prison districts, as I like to refer them as, is this. This is it. make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and, of course, sustainable. The world's population is constantly increasing. To accommodate everyone, we need to build modern. What does that mean? Let's interpret what modern mean. Modern means there's cameras everywhere. They can surveil you because you're hooked into the grid through digital ID and digital currency. Everything is surveilled, tracked, and traced. That's what a modern, sustainable city means. And now, within these cities, they're breaking it up into prison districts. So you're going to be corralled like cattle in a district where you can't drive because, in their view, you're going to be able to walk anywhere you need to walk within that district within 15 minutes. So no driving for you. They don't want you even owning a car. They don't want you even owning a house. They want total control. And as you walk this 15 minutes to the store, you're going to be surveilled with cameras that are connected to the 5G, 6G, 7G grid. They're going to be able to trace you and track you from the time you leave wherever it is you live, in some pod somewhere, in some high density living condominium, high rise. They're going to be able to track and trace you throughout your whole journey to whatever store it is that you need to go to, right? So if you happen to still have a car and you leave this 15-minute prison district, you'll be fined, probably very heavily. I'm not sure how businesses are going to operate. For example, I run a tree service in Saskatoon. I don't know how I service everybody within the city and outside the city. So I'm going to be breaking this rule, this bylaw, I assume, driving outside my 15-minute prison district to service all of the people in my city or outside the city. Is that going to be the cost of doing business? Or is that going to destroy my business because I can't afford the tariffs or the fines or the levies? Nobody's been able to answer that for me. For all of us to survive and prosper, we need new, intelligent urban planning. So they need smart cities, right? And that's smart cities are all connected to the Internet of Things that create safe, affordable, and resilient cities with green and culturally inspiring living conditions. That sounds a lot like utopia. Culturally inspiring living conditions. Like the social engineering that's going on here is just absolutely phenomenal. The targets. Everyone can help make sure that we meet the global goals. Use these 10 targets to create action to make cities and communities sustainable. So, target 11.1. Safe and affordable housing. Well, they're losing on that one, aren't they? By 2030, ensure access to all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services and upgrade slums. So you're going to be living in a pod, most likely by yourself, maybe with somebody else. Affordable housing, which means it's probably going to be a dump. And basic services, just your basic services. is what you're going to be living in, because you're not going to be able to afford. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy, right? This is how it is. You're not going to own it. You're going to rent it, and all of the stuff in your house will also be rented, owned by the multinational corporations, and you'll rent it from them. Your place isn't your place. You're actually going to share it with other people, this pod. So if you're lucky enough to have a job and you're not living on, government stipend of maybe, $300 a month, because that's what it'll end up being, because nobody who can afford to pay people to stay at home and do nothing, in this new world, nobody. So you'll be living on peanuts. You'll be literally standing in bread lines waiting for your bread. You won't be eating meat. You'll be eating crickets. You'll be eating bugs as a protein replacement, because, there's nothing wrong with that. Safe and affordable housing. So 11.2, affordable and sustainable transport systems. So when they say sustainable, they mean you will not be driving your dirty car. The state is going to take care of that for you within this 15-minute prison district. You're going to be able to take state-owned transport, maybe a bus, if you can't walk. By 2030, provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems for all. For all. For all. Improving road safety, notably by expanding public transport, with special attention to the needs of those in vulnerable situations, women, children, persons with disabilities, and older persons. What about men and boys? Aren't they sometimes in vulnerable situations? But it doesn't matter. Provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems for all. Inclusive and sustainable urbanization. By 2030, enhance inclusive and sustainable urbanization and capacity for participatory, integrated, and sustainable human settlement planning and management in all countries. So again, this is your unelected, unaccountable foreign entity creating cookie cutter policy for all of you. Sounds good? Zero accountability. Zero responsibility. But this is what your successive governments since 1992 have agreed to. And actually, when people say it's non-binding, well, they made it law in Canada, which makes it binding. And now they're compelled to report the progress in achieving the goals of sustainable development to the UN, an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity. Right? They're creating policy for the world. We are literally under global governance. Target 11.4, protect the world's cultural and natural heritage. Strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. So in other words, they're going to force everybody off the land because they want the land reverted back to nature, back to where we aren't farming anymore, we aren't ranching anymore, we aren't producing food for the planet, because they're going to have bug factories everywhere. That's why they're building them. So forget your steak, forget your ribs, forget your pork, forget your chicken. There was bylaws attempted to be passed in Thorhild where they limited the number of chickens that a landowner can have to four. Four chickens. That's where we're headed. They want people off the land and into the cities because if you can make life as miserable as possible for people that live outside the cities, then through the social engineering, they're going to send people from rural into the cities where they can be tracked and traced and surveilled 24/7, 365. That's what this is. I really hope people are wrapping their head around this and understanding where we're headed. This is 15-minute prison districts. Reduce the adverse effects of natural disasters. Oh, by 2030, significantly reduce the number of deaths and the number of people affected and substantially decrease the direct economic losses relative to global gross domestic product caused by disasters, including water-related disasters, with a focus on protecting the poor and the people in vulnerable situations. So driving people into the cities, sticking them into high-density condos, skyscrapers, is somehow going to do that. Reduce the environmental impact of the cities. By 2030, reduce the adverse per capita environmental impact of cities, including by paying special attention to air quality and municipal and other waste management. All right, so how do they do that? Well, they're already started. They've gotten rid of single-use plastics like straws and plastic bags at the grocery store. And they've gone and replaced them with paper bags and these cloth bags that are full of plastic still. The paper bags really kills me because that just means they have to cut down more forest, and by design, because our forests is what consume CO2. They love CO2. We need more CO2 in the atmosphere, not less. We need more. So this whole idea that we're going to just cut down trees and go back to using paper bags. You remember way back when grocery stores only had paper bags, and then they moved away from paper bags because it was better for the environment that we use plastic bags, because obviously we want to save the trees. So that narrative has been completely flipped again. Because, oil and gas, plastic is somehow bad. It's so upside down and backwards. 11.7, provide access to safe and inclusive green and public spaces. By 2030, provide universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public spaces, in particular for women and children, older persons, and persons with disabilities. What about men? Where do men fit into this equation? No, men don't fit into this equation. Men are toxically masculine. So the more we ignore the needs of men, the better. The better off everyone's going to be, apparently. Strong national and regional development planning. So this is, again, hyper-centralization of control, where they want to rid the provinces of county administration, rural municipality administration. They want to stop locals deciding what's in their best interest because people are too stupid, I guess, to figure out how to solve their problems. So they need stronger national and regional developing planning. So I had a conversation with an RM just south of here, a couple of RMs, and in there they hired a planning person, a coordinator, somebody in charge of planning for the RM. That person comes from Regina. Why did they need to hire on a contract basis somebody from Regina to plan for the RM in Davidson and Wilner? Why did they have to do that? Well, because this person, guaranteed this person, is associated to sustainable development. Guaranteed. Guaranteed associated to this agenda. And will create policy for those RMs that is in line with this agenda. So I say to those people of those RMs, get involved, fire that person they hired on contract, and determine for yourselves what's the best direction to go. That's my advice to all rural municipalities and counties. That's what you need to do. You need to take back control. And you need to be able to have people in that administration office able to say no to all of this. Like they did in Thorhild, where the people came together and they quashed it immediately. Because who wants those policies? Who wants land use bylaws that restrict how many chickens you can have on your property? How many pigs? How many ducks? How many cows? How many horses? It's your property. You should be able to determine for yourself what you can manage and what you can't. Not the state. The state shouldn't have that right. So no, we need the people to decide and make these decisions in rural municipalities, not national and regional development planning. Big no. So, again, if you're in a rural municipality, if you live rural, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, BC, wherever, Ontario, get into your RM office, get into your county administration, get in there, and start asking the right questions. Get your community involved, because it's going to take a community to push back against all of this insanity. Target 11.9, implement policies for inclusion, resource efficiency, and disaster risk reduction. It all sounds so nice. By 2020, substantially increase the number of cities and human settlements, adopting and implementing integrated policies and plans toward inclusion, resource efficiency, mitigation, and adaptation to climate change. This whole idea, the fact that they use this word adaptation to climate change is complete hogwash. They have been telling us for decades that we can control climate change by reducing CO2 in the atmosphere. Of course, that's false. We know it's false. They're using it as a funding mechanism through carbon tax and carbon pricing. This is all about control. mitigation and adaptation to climate change. You know, humans have adapted to climate change since the dawn of time. We're very good at adapting to what Mother Nature presents to us. In fact, we discovered oil and gas, the resource most easily extracted and put to use and refined and sold and utilized. It's the cheapest form of energy. And we shouldn't be going away from it. It is Mother Nature. Oil and gas is Mother Nature. It doesn't come from fossils. This idea that and Rockefeller was very smart when he came up with this. And it was Rockefeller, by the way. He was the first one to call it fossil fuels. He did that because they wanted to create the perception that our energy is scarce. And because that perception was established, they were able to charge for that energy and increase pricing for that energy because of its scarcity, because it's only from fossils, from dinosaurs that died, and this oil came to be. That's false. That's a fallacy. Oil and natural gas are resources. They are Mother Nature. And they will continue to recycle because all life on Earth is part of a cycle. We're all connected. Humans are connected to that cycle. We're part of it. We use the energy, but we also put it back. It's this loop, right? It's like trees, for example. Trees take in CO2, right? They love it. And then they expel oxygen so we can all breathe. It's a wonderful symbiotic relationship we have with Mother Nature that allows us to breathe. So that carbon is stored in the trees. When the tree dies, that carbon goes into the ground. That's where we get oil. That's where we get carbon, hydrocarbons, oil and gas. We're just recycling it. It's just like water. Water, the resource, is in a loop. We use it, we drink it, we expel it, we flush it, it goes into the river, it goes up into the sky through evaporation, and gets dropped somewhere else. And we use it, and we drink it, and we cook with it. And it's this system. Mother Nature is a beautiful thing. Humanity as part of Mother Nature is a beautiful thing. God's creation is just phenomenal. So this idea that oil and gas is fossil fuels is hogwash. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. And it's the cheapest energy out there. And people are now suffering because that energy has been taken away in Europe. Blown up, as a matter of fact. 2 pipelines blown up. Why? Because they want to raise the prices of these resources, to price you and me out of that market. That's inflation. That's how inflation, our cost of living, is all connected to all of this, to the Ukraine war, to this much bigger picture. It's all orchestrated. It's all coordinated. That's what all of this is. Anyways, 11 point whatever. 11A, I don't know. Anyway, support least developed countries in sustainable and resilient building. Support least developed countries, including through financial and technical assistance, in building sustainable and resilient buildings utilizing local materials. Right. Redistribution of wealth. Right? That's what this is. Find a goal 11 charity you want to support. Any donation, big or small, can make a difference. Redistribution of wealth. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't give to these charities because the money never gets to the people. It's siphoned off. It's redistribution of wealth. Stay away from them. All of them. Shop, eat, drink locally. Yes, I can agree with something. Shop, eat, drink locally. Supporting neighborhood businesses keeps people employed and circulates money back into the community. Yes, I agree with that. Local. Everything local. Never mind all of these big box stores. Never mind all of these multinationals, oligarchs, monopolies. Local, 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 local. But find your local farm that produces beef or pork or chicken. Find your local farmers. Deal directly with them. You'll know what you'll be getting. In these stores, you don't know what you're getting. You have no idea. Could be filled with bug protein, for all you know. Commute in a sustainable way. Bike or walk. Take public transport. Save the car trips for when you've got a big group. Gosh. Stay informed. Follow your local news. Oh, yeah, follow your local news because you have to be indoctrinated. You have to be led by your nose. Do not do that either. Stay away from all mainstream media. Forget about all of them. Support project in slums for safe housing. You can volunteer in slums to help with building houses, fixing existing ones, setting up public or green spaces. That's up to you. If you need to take part in all that, go ahead. Take advantage of your right to elect leaders in your local community. Oh boy, that's getting harder and harder to do because nobody has any faith in our elections. Take care of public spaces. Start yourself and inspire others to contribute to better public spaces. Water the greenery, trim and plant trees, renovate sports arenas and playgrounds, organize it. See, all of this stuff we don't need to be told how to do it. We do a wonderful job of all of this stuff on our own. So I just wanted to touch base with you folks in regards to digital ID, digital currency, and 15-minute cities, and how it's all connected to sustainable development agenda. All of this stuff. It's all connected. All of it. Yes, Larry, live local. See that cow? Eat that cow. Know your butchers. Absolutely know your butchers. 100%. Yes, God's creation. Well, I still refer to it Mother Nature. God created Mother Nature. So that's how I look at it. Yes, we are being taken out of the equation, Wendy. 100%. All right. So, anyways, that's it for tonight. I have a meeting at 8:00 that I have to go to over on Zoom. So, I just wanted to talk about these things. They're important. People need to understand the context, how it's all related to this agenda. We released the 5th episode, STG number 5, the SDGs and what you need to know. It's up at Acres of Truth on YouTube, on Rumble, on acresoftruth.com. So check it out. Share it with your friends, your family, your co-workers, whoever. Get it out there so people understand what all of this stuff means to everybody's life and how they want to control it all. Anyways, that's it. That's a wrap for tonight. Thanks, guys. Remember, globalism bad, nationalism good. All right. Ciao for now.
One day the show stays on because of you. We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I